Hi everyone and welcome to another video from Hostile Territory. If you have empathy or compassion in a toxic workplace, it will be your undoing. It will cost you dearly and it will cause you lots of problems. Why is this so important? You'll hear in this video. So stay tuned.
Hostile territory.
At the beginning of this video, I will read the definition of empathy that I found on Google, and it goes like this. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. So, all in all, if that other person is happy, sad, in trouble, in need of a conversation perhaps or something like that, you will sense that if you have empathy and you will act accordingly to that. Empathy and compassion, at least in my humble opinion, is one of the building blocks of human nature and of being a human, and one of the building blocks of our society. And without it, things would be vastly different. The lack of empathy and the lack of compassion wherever you are, at your workplace, within your family, is a serious sign of trouble and something that should be avoided. So, why is this immensely important for you to know? The first thing is that showing empathy in a toxic and hostile workplace means showing weakness. The second thing would be that that weakness leads to those people thinking that they can take advantage of you, and maybe they will. And third, it will cloud your judgment in case push comes to shove. We will briefly go through each and every one of these. First of all, about weakness. Know that in a toxic and hostile workplace, showing compassion and being empathetic, I hope I use the right term, is just like sticking a big red alert light on your head saying, come here, use me for your own purposes. The key on this part is to recognize on time with what kind of people you are dealing. You don't have to be stiff towards everybody. People are different. Some may be empathetic in that environment. But trust me, at least in the beginning, it's very important not to show any empathy and compassion. About other people gaining advantages over you. Just like with weakness, the moment that you show empathy and compassion, they will start advancing. I don't know if it's a primal human trait, but if they see that you're a good person, that you want to do good things, that you want to help people, they see this as some sort of stupidity, that you're a dimwit. And they try to gain advantage. In a toxic and hostile workplace, be sure of this. People will try to take advantage of you if you show empathy and compassion. Finally, empathy and compassion will cloud your judgment when push comes to shove. Trust me. I'll make an example. If a colleague at work, which often happens in a toxic and hostile workplace since everybody is, looking after themselves, for instance, wants to get you into some kind of financial mischief where he or she will earn some money, and he or she desperately asks you to help them on that part. Empathy and compassion will tell you to, of course, help that person, especially, if he or she is in trouble, desperately needs that money and everything else. Compassion demands that you help that person, although you're going to put yourself at risk. I will now tell you the probable outcome of that situation. That person will take the money, put it in their pocket, and if necessary, will blame you for doing it. Have that in mind. Never let empathy cloud your judgment, okay? You can feel sorry for people, but always have your interest in mind first. Now we come to the hard part of this video, and that is how to change your personality to meet these needs in the toxic workplace and show less empathy and compassion. Well, I'll tell you one thing. If you're a well-behaved, well-brought-up person that has culture, that has good manners, it's going to be hard. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, compassion and empathy are built in within you. It is a part of your personality and it is there by default. But again, if you want to survive in a toxic workplace, you'll have to change it to some extent. But have this in mind. Do not get rid of compassion and empathy. Rather, store it in another place. Make a division between compassion and empathy and the person you're supposed to be at work. This is very hard to do, but if you do it, you are the king, absolutely. make a line between, and when you come home to your loved ones, to your family, to your friends and everyone else, simply be the compassionate and empathetic person. When you come to that workplace, simply stop being that person. Once you go through the door of your office, become that other person. This will take practice, it will take time, but it is extremely efficient. Now, let me tell you a few examples from my personal experience and from my previous toxic workplace where I showed empathy and compassion, and it costed me dearly. First, I showed empathy towards my boss's alcoholism. Then I showed empathy towards my coworker, which was the boss's mistress, I was later to find out, who was a single mom. She had a kid and she was the sole provider in her family. And finally, I showed empathy towards my third coworker, who was slower than all of us in work, who was a bit, I don't know how to say this, he didn't get all of the things together that fast, but it all later turned out to be slacking. And these are some of the main things. Now, let me tell you a couple of examples where my coworkers did not show empathy and compassion towards me and did not have any problems with that. Let these examples also be an incentive for you to change that behavior on time. The first example would be when my father was terminally ill. It was during 2014. It was a very bad time. My father was hospitalized. It was obvious he didn't have much time left, God rest his soul. And during that time, I was heavily involved in the whole procedure. You know, with the hospitalization, I drove 100 kilometers almost every day back and forth, drove my mother to see him and to help him. It was a big nightmare. What do you think during that time did my colleagues go and say, do you need me to cover your shift? Do you need some days off to rest and recuperate? Because I was tired all the time. What happened is that if I wanted a free shift, I'd had to work it off later. So I ended up, besides all of that nightmare, I ended up working 2 shifts in a row because those people asked that of me. That is zero compassion in a very, very serious situation. On the other side, when the boss's mistress needed a 2 or 3 days off to go to the seaside a bit earlier, that was no problem, and that person got the days off. The other very dramatic example is when my health was at stake. Mind you, my toxic and hostile workplace costed me my health dearly. I talked about this in a previous video. And because of that, because of the stress, because of the heavy workload, because of the constant bad atmosphere, because of the bad working conditions, we didn't have proper ventilation, we didn't have sunlight, I got a minor stroke. When I had the stroke, when one side of my body stopped working, I was hospitalized. And what do you think, what were the first messages from my coworkers after I got a bit better? When are you coming back to work? Because there's lots of work, there's lots of things to do, we can't cover all of those shifts and so on. So when I was in a life dangerous situation, the compassion was zero, zilch. And the third dramatic example is the shifts we worked in. After I recuperated to some extent with my health, I had to go back to work. And when I went back to work, we had these shifts that lasted 12 hours. And in most cases, they lasted 15, 16 hours. And this was all like this because my 3 coworkers decided that they had to pay less travel and gas money. Mind you, the previous 8 years, I traveled every day for 24 kilometers back and forth, and nobody asked, did I have the gas money? Nobody cared, you know, because in that time they were 100 meters away from work. My point on this part is that I asked them to change shifts back to 8 hours regardless of the gas money because my health was endangered. Zero compassion, zero empathy. And essentially that was one of the things that drove me away because again I started to have health issues and I decided what's enough is enough, and that was one of the main reasons why I left the company. I hope this was dramatic enough to show you why you should not have compassion and empathy. I showed compassion and empathy for boss's alcoholism, being a single mom, and being slower at work. All of this was very, very stupid, dumb, and I paid the price for it. On the other side, when I needed compassion in very serious things, life-threatening things, I did not get it. Let this be a good example of how you will end up if you show empathy and compassion in the wrong place. So, dear viewer, if you show by mistake, by your own willing, compassion and empathy. And just remember my examples, you will get screwed up. Also, I must say this. Do not take any of this generally. The masters of this take every person at a time, and take this especially into consideration if you work in bigger companies and among a bigger number of people. 20, 30, 100 people. There are all kinds of people. Perhaps some people react that way because they have to protect themselves and so on. But the safest thing to do is to always not show compassion and not show empathy and start from that. So that's it for this time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. I sincerely hope from the bottom of my heart that all of these videos and this channel helps you get through bad times in a toxic workplace. That is the main point of all of this, what I'm doing. Thank you for your time and thank you for watching.